Third degree, yes indeed. What's up, everybody? Pappy Check here, and I am back in the DFW. I'm trying to do this music thing, and the only people that I really need to connect with, intermingle with, that I want to get to know are my fellow soccer sickos from Third Degree. Follow me on Instagram at pappy.check, or come see me play live on Thursdays in Bishop Arts District at Taco y Vino. It's good times. Come out and see me, and I will play you the Third Degree theme live. Wouldn't that make your day? Speaking of that thing, go ahead, Peter, Buzz, and Dan. Without further ado, Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by the Dallas Beer Guardians. Friday night is the biggest party of the year. To celebrate FC Dallas's home opener, the Dallas Beer Guardians are hosting their 24-hour tailgate, and they're inviting out all the FC Dallas curious. DBG taps the kegs at 7 p.m. in the Red Lot on the southwest end of Toyota Stadium, and the beer keeps flowing all the way to kickoff on Saturday. Just look for the big tent. In addition to the always free beer, DBG will have free food from their executive chef, plenty of games and activities, and maybe even some surprise guests. If you can't join them for the 24-hour tailgate, you can always find DBG on X, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, and Discord threads. Basically anywhere you can legally check out social content. Just search for Dallas Beer Guardians.
Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 301 on a new drop day of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, it's me, Peter, and there he is, Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Hello.
Are you feeling good, my friend?
I'm always feeling good. I'm just absolutely peachy.
You sound like so peachy, I can feel the fuzz of your peachiness.
That's disgusting.
That is weird, sorry. And giggling in the background is your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer himself, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hey, fellas, I was very distracted by the idea that, well, Dan's beard is really long, so I'm not sure where this fuzz is that you're
You don't want to know, Buzz. Don't
know.
stop.
Yeah.
Just drop
That's why I
it.
stopped and laughed.
Stop. Drop it. Don't go any further with that.
Drop it like it's hot. Something like that.
Don't continue with that weird line of thinking that I started everybody on.
Yeah.
Well, look at us, Buzz. 2 road games to start the season, 4 points as Dallas goes up to the altitude in Colorado to face off their nemesis. And I didn't even realize this until they mentioned it at the beginning of the game. I can't believe we didn't say this in the last episode. Oh, by the way, yes, I should probably address the fact that we've made a decision to move the pod to the beginning of the week. Before, you don't have to edit this, but I'm editing myself.
Yeah.
We've made the decision, Buzz, to move the pod to the beginning of the week for reasons I'm not sure why.
Well, by the time we were breaking the game down, it was like 5 days later, and it felt like it wasn't quite as on point and fresh. So we're going to try it earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And that way, like, because we had shifted to Friday, the gap between when we were airing it and that next game was really tight. And so people were having to cram it in on Friday. And so this way we'll give people actually a chance to listen to it over the next few days, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if we like this schedule better. The fact is that we have the freedom to do what we want. So if we decide we don't like this, we can change it up again.
I'm sure the curious will let you know.
Yeah,
Buzz.
I'm sure they will. I mean, so far, though, we raised the concept in the Discord, and everyone seemed to think it was a great idea. So here we go on Tuesdays.
All right. Dan, are you happy with the change? That's what everybody really cares about, if you're happy.
I mean, it doesn't really change anything for me. Just got to fit some time in.
Okay. Well, I know you've got a very busy OnlyFans channel schedule to adhere to, so we don't want to mess that up for you.
I've got to be honest, I have never visited OnlyFans of any variety.
Wink, wink, nudge,
That's
nudge. Right. hey. Don't give him a trademark violation right there, though.
Denial's not just a river in Egypt. Okay, here we go. So let me start over. So yes, hey, look at us, Buzz.
Yeah.
2 games into the season, 4 points on 2 road games to start off this thing, going up to Colorado, which, by the way, until they mentioned it at the beginning of the broadcast, part two of that, I can't believe we didn't mention it on the last episode, that Dallas had not won in Colorado since like 2002 or some ridiculous amount of time.
I think it was since 2014. I think, did we not mention that? I thought we mentioned it.
Did we?
We talked a lot about how hard it is to win there. I mean, maybe we didn't specifically say.
Was it? And I see 2014 even sounds more recent than the date they gave on the broadcast.
I honestly don't remember now. So
okay. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the 2 games in, 5 goals for and 4 goals against. Well, hold on to your hats. It's going to be a roller coaster of a season that way. At the end of the day, the important thing is to remember is that what probably makes the most difference is the goal differential, right? At the end of the year, you want to be positive, like a plus 10 or so. You're probably looking at being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So score more than you allow. It's not that hard.
I have a feeling that what we got on Saturday night in Colorado is going to be a kind of high-level summary of how this season goes.
Well, on the post-game press conference, Coach Eric Quill was intense. I mean, he was... I don't want to say fired up because he wasn't like celebrating, but he was definitely like, and he talked quite intensely about how happy he was about like the never say die and the comeback and the goals and the relationship between this, that, and the thing. And then he also quite clearly said, we got to clean that up in the back. I mean, he knows that you can't allow 3 goals, allowed and expect to win games, generally speaking. Right. I mean, we've seen this team for the last few years. Anytime they give up 2, you're like, it's over. But obviously this team can score a lot more. So you have more leeway in that regard. But you can't just keep bleeding goals all the time. Even though if you're scoring a lot, you got to clean that up for sure.
If he's being overly intense, I'm going to suggest, and we really do need to have a conversation about this, Buzz, it's the Eric Quill hat.
It's the hat? You think it's the hat? Yeah, he loves that hat.
Man, he wears, it's not just the hat, it's how he wears the hat. It's pulled all the way down over his eyes. You can, like he's shifty or something, like he's hiding something. I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Yeah, that's not new. It may be a generational thing because it's like a trucker style, like flat brimmed. And he wore the exact same style of hat in New Mexico. It was black instead of red. So, it's just what he does.
It's his look.
It's his look. And I wondered if maybe he chose a red one so that when he's out on the training field, he's like, well, I'm wearing a red hat. Nobody else wear red. So everybody can see who I am. Maybe, but then he wears it on the sideline. And when he was at New Mexico, he wore a black one on the sideline. So it wasn't the color choice in that case. So it's just his style. I sculpt hats myself. Not that I wear very many hats. I mostly wear visors, but because I have plenty of hair, I don't have that problem, that follicle problem.
I'm so distracted by the Eric Quill hat. And I'm just wondering if he just decided at some point he wanted his own kind of Tom Landry thing. You remember the old Tom Landry hat?
Yeah.
So he just decided to go with this, and that's what he's sticking by. I'm not saying I don't like it. I just find it very, very distracting.
I think it's funny how much people talk about it. Like, and even in the Discord, people talk about it. I'm like, it's just a hat, but it's like people, maybe it's because of you. Maybe
Okay, don't you remember Shellis Hyman's butter leather jacket that we all obsessed about for like 3 seasons?
That's the thing. Yeah.
He wore that ridiculous butter leather jacket, and we were all fascinated by it.
I'm trying to remember if there was a coach since Dave Durr that would wear a tie. He was the last one that would wear a tie on the sideline. I don't remember anybody else.
Yeah, Dave got a little dressed up on occasion.
He would wear a tie. I think he gave it up after a while, but in the beginning, for sure, he had a tie.
He had a tie on at the game, but at the old Mill Inn, that tie had been taken off. It was gone by then.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you how many beers in that was. That was a little. Yeah, that's a different story.
All right, so I think the big surprise was the lineup. Pedrinho getting the start. Buzz.
Okay, well. This is fascinating to me on 3 different levels. The first level is, to me, this is a remarkable change from Eric Quill at North Texas SC. There's a different mentality here in the sense of like, before I would have thought he would think about the development of the player. I don't want to yank a guy really fast. I'm going to help. He's my guy. I'm going to bring him along. Nope, you're out. So then the question becomes, okay, did he just yank him because he didn't play well? Did Pedrinho outplay him?
Wait, is this level 2?
This is level 2.
Ding.
So like, is he pulled out for, thank you for the sound effects. Is he pulled out because he didn't play well, which we all thought he was probably the weakest player in the 11? Was he pulled out because Pedrinho just did really well? Or option number 3, did he pull him out because he's got 3 guys? And he specifically said in the post-game press conference that It's 3 guys for 1 spot. It's Pedrinho, it's Bernie Camigo, and it's Logan Farrington. 3 guys for that 1 spot. The other spot he called it, i.e. the not Anderson Julio spot. So what do we find out this weekend? Is it Logan Farrington's turn? Is he going 1, 2, 3? Like each guy gets a game and then we see? Or did he just yank Bernie and Pedrinho was the next best guy from training? Or is there some other factor like Logan's his backup 9 or if Logan's really impactful off the bench? So there's lots of questions going forward about which one it's going to be. But I think it's absolutely fascinating that there is definitely a mentality change from when he was in North Texas, where I think he would have helped that young man along. Not now. Now it's all about the result. And it's like, you're out, you know, if you don't, and it's the one position above all others that is clearly in real competition. He says, everybody always says there's competition, and maybe some of these spots like Lucho Acosta is not really in competition to not start, right? Moose is not really in competition to not start, but lots of other guys are. So
Dan, I'm interested in your thoughts on how well Pedrinho played, because I've got all these notes that starting off the game about how he missed the absolute sitter of a header just 5 minutes in. Boy, what a nice cross by Shaq Moore. So early in the game, by the way. Pedrinho missing that just seemed like a super crime. But then I've got all these notes about Pedrinho always seems to just make the pass a little bit too late, not always the right decision. He wasn't having a good game, but then he scores a goal in the 42nd minute, and suddenly now he's a goal scorer, and everybody's going to talk about how Pedrinho is. So I'm interested, Dan, how you thought he played.
I thought he grew into the game as much as anything. I don't know, he pops up at the right place at the right time. But yeah, there are a few sloppy moments there. But I mean, he's a guy who was playing in MLS Next Pro last year, so there's going to be that adaptation, and then also to Quill's style as well.
One of the things I find fascinating about the way Pedrinho played is, I talked about this when the lineup came out, is that he will play, when they showed him as being on the right, he ended up playing on the left. But he plays more as a false wing. And when that happens, that sort of opens up the wing for someone to come up and down and get forward. Coach Quill specifically talked about with Pedrinho the idea that he would get into the pocket and almost become another option as the 10, even when he's playing the wing, because, and we'll talk about this a bit more with Acosta and Musa and how he wants them positioned. So I think you can look for going forward when Pedrinho is in there, to watch him play, yes, that wing, but also come underneath and be a second option as a 10, confuse defenses, try and slide into that zone 14 that Dan loves to talk about so much, and make some hay in there when maybe guys are paying more attention to Acosta and maybe losing track of Pedrinho. It'll be something to watch for.
Well, in some ways, it's kind of like Alan Velasco. His position in those same sort of inside runs to just allow him to slot underneath, which, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about the positioning of Acosta and Musa, like you said, but when they kind of get into that almost 2 up top shape, then it's just a kind of a nice transition point for him.
So Dallas gives up an early goal in the 6th minute. Was it a cross? Was it a shot? I actually had this exact same thing happen to me in my old man beer league on Sunday. I was trying to put in a killer left foot cross to my forward who was making a run to the spot. And lo and behold, it just comes off my foot wonky and is floating up in the air. And all of a sudden I hear their goalkeeper off the line go, "Oh shit." And it dropped in the far corner. And that's what Rosenberry did to Paz. I don't know if it got deflected. I don't know if Paz just read it wrong. But Dallas was down 1-0 pretty quickly. And it just kind of felt like it was going to be one of those days.
That was the first goal of your career there, Peter?
No. In fact, I'm on a weird, actually, Buzz, I'm on a weird streak right now of 3 goals that I didn't mean to score.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
All own goals.
No, they are goals in our favor. That was not the intent of what I was trying to do when they went in the net. Yeah, so.
So the thing about that goal from that side is that, like, you remember, when, I clearly remember talking about this on the podcast. This is the last time I can remember Colorado really making hay. I talked about how Keegan Rosenberry had been at right back and he was attacking the Farfan Ibiaga gap couple of years ago, and they had a great success with that. And I mentioned specifically that because FC Dallas is playing Urigide at left center back, that wouldn't be much of a problem. Well, there, lo and behold, Rosenberry was on the left side, left back, again attacking the gap between Ibiaga and the outside back, who on that side's even more likely to get forward. Mm-hmm. And they made hay there in that gap. All 3 goals came through that gap. So obviously that's the thing that's got to be fixed and addressed. as for that shot, that's that kind of fluke flat, like you catch a couple of guys out of position, all of a sudden it's floating in. It's flukish. I don't remember whether that one got deflected. The second one definitely got deflected. So, some fluke. It's hard to say, oh, we got to button it up. Oh, it was such a fluke goal. Well, when all three goals come through the same gap, that's when you start to take note of what an issue might be.
Yeah, the whole first half, up until the obvious turn of events, was despairingly bad. Like, I was really concerned about the team. They couldn't keep possession. They couldn't get out of their own half. I even made a note that after the first goal, they got down to the Colorado end and turned the ball over, and you could see Quill in the 8th minute having to gesticulate and urge them to get back. And I thought that was really weird that so early in a game he's having to urge people to get back into position. And the game just was very much all Colorado. And in fact, of course, in the 39th minute, they score a second goal, which is started by a bad combination touch between Lucho and Musa, and Dallas gets caught in the transition. And, they're suddenly down 2-0, and it feels like, well, this is not going to be good.
Well, it's not surprising, perhaps, that Quill has to tell everybody to get back. He's a very offensive team, so they may need reminders occasionally to get back. And one of the things I know they've been working on is the difference between, the quick counter press versus real press and a full blown, up the field. That's not what they want. They want the counter press and then come back. So that's probably details and game understanding still stuff he's working on. The missed touch up front, that's not that big a deal. Again, through that gap, this is another deflected cross. The guys in the middle, Ibiaga and Oz, lose track of the center forward, and he splits the gap between those two guys. Again, kinks being worked out between two center backs. The cross is a little bit wonky and maybe not what everyone was expecting, and catches everybody off guard. So again, some flukiness, but it's the transition on catching them upfield and allowing them the opposition into that gap again that's dangerous, and that's where you got problems. You got to get back fast, you got to recover fast after you quick counter press.
And then weirdly, I have a note that I just says there's a bullet point and it says Ramiro ? Where is he?
Yeah, that's the same thing I had. Again, he got effectively bypassed in midfield. And I mentioned it in my breakdown. He only had
6 touches or some ridiculously.
Where to go? Hold on. 33, but
he's played 2 games for this team, and I honestly can't tell you if he's good, bad, amazing, sucks rocks. I have no idea what the qualities of that dude is at this point, and it's weird.
Yeah, he's doing some recovering and a little bit of defense, like a block and intercept. He puts himself in decent spots. I like the energy. I like the range, but only 33 touches. That's half what Lletget had. And 5 progressive passes, that's not bad. But then he didn't have any progressive carries at all. And he didn't have any receptions. That means the guys out of the back he's not offering line breaking receptions to people coming out of the back either. So there's massive amounts of the team is going through Lletget. Lletget had the most touches, 67. So everyone has comfortable feelings about Lletget, faith in Lletget. So they're passing into Lletget. Or else maybe he's staying home more and being in the right, perhaps he's providing himself in the right line breaking opportunities. This low level of touches and the lack of people passing to him is the kind of thing where if this was mid-season, I'd be really, really worried about it. But remember, he only got healthy 5 days before this season started, right? And played 30 minutes or something in one scrimmage. Also, with Lucho Acosta being a big focus in there and Lletget being a big focus in there, maybe it's understandable he's not seeing a lot of the ball, but basically I'm with you. He's playing in the game and it's almost impossible to tell he's there. I mean, not even a good way impossible to tell, where it's all he's about. With Yaramendi would be a little higher up the field. And when the ball would be turned over and their team would come out, he would instantly step forward and turn the play back. And it was clearly and obvious and you could see it. I'm not seeing that with Ramiro. Now, at the same time, he often is in good spots in between marking those gaps. And when he's in there, I'm not seeing missed tracked runners as much. So I'm not going to slam the guy at this point, but it's he definitely isn't finding his place in the shape and the team and the tactic yet. And that's obviously a thing that they'll need to worry about. Part of it too is that no show Kafamana yet in training that we know of. I mean, I know for sure he hadn't as of last week. So there's not a lot of choices in that spot, to be fair.
I don't know what illness that dude had or has or is still dealing with or whatever, but The fact that he's not even training with the team at this point is pretty frightening, or at least says something. Yeah, so the whole first half was, I mean, this is the oddity of this game, Buzz, because for 42 minutes, Dallas was flat terrible. This is one of the worst performances we've seen out of the team in a long time, and certainly was a change from what we had seen in Houston, at least in some parts. And then suddenly, in a flash, everything changed as Dallas finally began to connect passes down the field, keep possession, didn't do anything stupid. They were connecting passes, got all the way down the field, and lo and behold, Pedrinho gets to roof one in, and suddenly now it's 2-1, and the game changed right there in that particular moment, and I'm not even sure why.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder if maybe Colorado was feeling pretty good, and they sort of let off the pedal, perhaps, or whether Dallas just sort of realized that, like, the fact I can't get my breath is just the way it's going to be. I'm going to have to run through this. Or maybe they just got angry enough. You know, it's hard to really say.
My other note in that was that Dallas finally won 2 duels out of that sequence. And in fact, it was Musa and Lucho who actually each won their duel to start that sequence.
Well, one of my reasons I picked Costa as my man of the match was because I felt like the whole game, like, the team was feeding off of his energy. Like when he would do something energetic or make a nice run or make a nice little play or a dribble past a guy, like the whole team would go, yeah, they would like get all hyped up for a little bit. And I think late in that half, you're right that when he and Musa started doing some things, I think the team woke up and said, okay, we are going to be in this one, and realized that we can get some opportunities, you know, and get forward. When you have a talismanic player like that, I mean, Musa is a player that everyone on the team recognizes as really good, but that's not the same as Lucho Acosta. Lucho Acosta, everybody recognizes this is a league MVP level player. He's going to carry us. If we just go with him, we're going to be fine. And I think that's probably a lot of what it was.
Yeah. And in fact, 3 minutes later, unbelievably, and I read my notes incorrectly. The winning of the two duels was not the first goal. It was this second one where the ball gets played up. Musa wins his duel, plays it back to Lucho. Lucho wins a duel and then plays it forward. And that begins the highlight moment of this game, which is where Dallas fans finally got to see their very own Lucho Acosta type goal. And what a goal it was. And man, and suddenly now we went from thinking this is a wooden spoon type performance to in 3 minutes, now it's 2-2 and game on.
Yeah, the first of those 2 goals was a really nice combination. It involved like everybody up the right side. You know, Moore was involved, Musa was involved, Anderson Julio was involved. And the second goal was just beautiful. It was such an amazing combo with Musa and Acosta. And that burst that Acosta had was next level, and you can tell everybody was like, "Oh God, this is going to be fun."
But the chippy loft finish was just ridiculous.
And the way they celebrated together and like looked at each other with big grins on their face, and like those 2 guys like being dialed in is so beautiful to see when you have a pair.
Yeah.
It's just feeding off each other like that.
Dan, so we get to halftime. It's 2-2. What were you thinking at that particular moment? Were you relieved, happy, freaked out?
Blown away at that point. Yeah, it was weird. Like, you go from a road win to coming back from 2 behind, and suddenly you're like, well, the hell, this is already better than anything last season. What's going on? We expected this real slow build, and here they are running out the gates like it was an Oscar Pereira season.
Well, the second half starts. And one of the things that I immediately was a little concerned by was that they didn't seem to be in any hurry to progress the game. Like immediately right off the bat, a ball goes out for a throw in, and Farfan's just kind of half-assing it to go pick up the ball. Like there was no urgency. It was almost as if they were happy with the fact they had tied the game. And here they are to start the second. And I was a little concerned with the kind of the body language and the attitude with, hey, look, it's 2-2. Let's not be too hasty. Let's take our time to do things. And I was a little worried about that, and which also comes to this other part of the performance, Buzz, that I'm really fascinated to hear from you about, which is this kind of phenomena of seeing Musa drop further and further back into midfield to get involved in the play. And is that part of the problem that they're having in getting in the final third of the field? Because every time Musa drops back and they kind of retain possession, there's nobody to play the ball to unless somebody carries it up there.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, Quill was very adamant that in the post-game show that like he wants Musa and Acosta to be much higher, like together as a tandem. And that's where that Pedrinho coming into the gap underneath is part of the game plan, to try and, because he wants Acosta to get high and play in combinations with Musa. That leaves a giant space there. So if you have Pedrinho, whichever side he's playing on, can drop in and fill that sort of a 10 role. And if he's on the right, then Moore comes forward. If he's on the left, then Farfan will come forward. So you'll have a nice rotational setup that way, and you get into that modern, that W that everyone does up front, where they have two guys and then playing off. So it's an exciting prospect to watch, and I think maybe because we've talked a lot the first 2 weeks about Dallas' struggle to get through the middle of the field, that Lletget is kind of doing some of it, but then Ramiro isn't, and they're struggling to connect. They're having to go wide all the time, and Eric doesn't want to be a one-trick pony. So I think that's why Musa's coming back. He's trying to come back and add an extra outlet, an extra line break, which nobody wants. So he quite clearly, because I specifically asked Quill about that partnership, that Acosta-Musa partnership, and he said that he loved how it's going, but they still want to be higher still. They want to get those two guys up the field where they belong in the dangerous part of the field, and everybody else underneath serve them and get it up to them and fill in that gap. So it's a work in progress. I think it's okay that in the second game of the season, it's not flawless. It's when you have a completely rebuilt team and a new coach, they probably didn't even get into these kind of tactics until deeper into the spring. And then Acosta only arrived a week before the season, and Ramiro got healthy a week before the season. And maybe Lletget's not even the starter in that deep position if they get everybody healthy. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. They're still not determined who's going to be the other wing other than Anderson Julio. So pieces are still in flux. So it's not a panic time yet that's not ideally performing like you want it to.
I have a note in here early in the second half, which was like the third time I had mentioned this, but he had done something bad in this moment. I think he played a ball out really poorly. Man, I hadn't seen him play in a really long time, and I know he's been with Colorado now for a bit, but Reggie Cannon is not very good anymore. And he on the Pedrinho missed header just early in the game, he completely lost Pedrinho in that moment, and he lost Pedrinho on the goal that Pedrinho scored. And then I just thought he wasn't very good. I was really kind of surprised how shockingly not good Reggie Cannon looked for Colorado. Did you pick up on that?
I thought he spent a lot of time really high. He didn't. I was expecting more of a end-to-end sort of running from him, and instead he kind of was almost playing like a wingback and not coming back far enough, really. So I didn't notice him being particularly poor, but admittedly I wasn't really focused on him.
His defending. I mean,
his position wasn't good. I didn't think.
I was surprised.
He was pretty good at progressing the ball, but yeah, he just seemed a step behind everything. And I mean, the goal that was ruled out for offside was a perfect example of that.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, if you want to, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a great detail. But if somebody was holding Logan on, it was Reggie playing a little too deeply. All right, so we get the first subs of the game. Ramiro, who had been largely absent, goes off. Bernie comes on for Pedrinho, and Siki and Sebeling comes on for Ramiro. And Siki had one of those good moment, bad moment kind of games, because really right off in the 68th minute, it is Siki and Sebeling who steps up on a ball that Colorado is trying to play through, and he wins the ball at midfield, and then that starts an entire sequence, and Musa ends up with the finish, and Dallas is up 3-2. And of course, everybody at that point is feeling good.
Well, I have to say that, like, in my post-game 3 things, I mentioned that I didn't like that Siki sub at that moment because Dallas was leading 3-2 when he came in, and of course they weren't. It was actually still tied 2-2. I lost track of when Siki came in. He came in when the game was tied. So, like, I thought it was a bit of a indictment of a roster issue that, like, you don't trust Norris when you're leading to come in as a 6, and you don't have any other options, so you're stuck playing Siki as a 6. Well, they weren't leading, they were tied. And so once I realized that, then okay, I understand that sub a little more, because Siki is a guy who can pinch forward and make a play and get you something going. So, like, if you're going for the win, I actually really like that sub, because that's a guy putting in a more attacking body in for a more defensive body, and you're going to go for it. You're going to try and get forward and do something. And that is the positive negative of Siki, is that yes, he has a good moment and he makes a great pinch, and then Musa has that amazing patient striker finish where he's just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then flicks it with his right foot early rather than letting it come all the way down and going left. He gets it early with the right and catches everybody slightly off guard and gets it in. It's a pure striker goal. So that's an actually fascinating goal. And you're completely right that that's the two-headed monster that is Siki and Sebling, the good and the bad, coming up shortly after that.
Yeah, because my next note is that, oh my gosh, Dallas is playing so deep, which is probably because it's Lletget and Siki playing the two holding mid spots. And I literally have, it feels like they're going to give up another goal. And sure enough, at 72, there's a Rapids goal. And a lot of that is tied to Siki and Sebling in his bad moment, not following his man who ran into the box and crossed it.
Yeah, that moment really bothers me because it almost looks like Siki is struggling and can't move very quickly. He doesn't burst and follow the guy. He kind of just jogs after him. And I thought, well, that's not good. That guy just came into the game. Why is he jogging? But it's just, I think he just got caught flat-footed and lost him and then was like, shit, because that definitely created the opening. And one of the center backs tried to come to that to him and it got plays it across to the wide open striker. So it's, you can't have... This is the difference between Ramiro was in there when Siki was in there. Like Ramiro, you don't really notice him, but then you don't notice those untracked runners either. So there may be some stuff that you would like to get out of Ramiro, but you definitely don't have those breakdowns either. So there's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, perhaps. And again, this is just another thing that's like you got to clean some of these things up. You got to figure these things out and get them, your deep game, deep seat, low block shape cleaned up nicely and solidly, and you can't have these kind of breakdowns late and throwaway points. So you should have that one.
So we're at 3-3, and Dan, did you have any faith that they were going to leave it on the table and give it up, or what did you think was going to happen from there on?
I thought there was going to be another goal. I just didn't know which way.
Really? Okay. So I do want to point this out because I thought he had another really, really strong game. And in the 76th minute, I call him OU, you call him Oz. Some people call him Uragide, which is probably the right thing to say. Although Oz isn't part of his name. That's why I'm confused by the Oz nickname.
Well, he's the great and powerful Oz. I explained that like Osaze. So it's Osaz.
That's not,
and that's Oz.
No, that's Osaz.
Yeah. No. Well, I keep shortening it. I dropped the A and then I dropped so it's just, it comes, that's how nicknames are formed.
All right. Yeah.
Wait, you've lengthened Show's name, but shortened Asazi Uragide's name.
Well, it's because it's Uragide is hard to say. Plus, I like the great and powerful Oz.
I was just going to call him by his initials, but whatever. All right. Well, anyway, I thought he had a really good game. In the 76th minute in particular, he got caught having to track back with, I think, 2 Rapids players on him, and he ended up winning that double duel. And, man, the immediate thought I had of that was if that had been Sebastian Lletget, or had been Martinez, or even Tafari, I wondered if it would have ended up the same way it did. I just thought he really showed his quality in that particular moment. I don't know if either one of you remember what I'm talking about.
I do. That was a really good play. There were some other moments that I thought weren't so great. I didn't think this game was as good as the first game. There were some problems with him and the spacing of Debiaga and which guy was going to stay and which guy was going to go and which guy was going to, and got that center forward getting a brace in between the two guys. Basically, that's not a great sign. But overall, I thought, other than those couple of letdown moments, I thought it was also still very good. There's still a lot to build on. He's still one of the best defensive signings they've made in years. I just didn't think this was as good as game one. But that moment you're talking about, yes, was very nice. And you're right. I don't think there's many other defenders on this team that would have solved that situation.
Okay, so here's the moment everybody I'm sure has been waiting for. Not always my favorite thing to talk about, but in the 79th minute, Logan Farrington, I'm telling you, in another world, that would have been a goal of the year consideration just because the run is so nice, the first touch is so nice, and the finish is so nice, and would have put the team up 4-3 at that particular moment. But of course, as we all know now, the linesman, the assistant, raises his flag, calls for offside. VAR looks at it and says there's no clear and obvious error, and the goal is called back. I don't know how you guys want to discuss this. Do you want to bother with it? I have opinions about it. Dan, you did a little deep dive on the Discord if you'd like to explain to everybody what you found and saw.
Yeah, I saw someone had drawn a line of offside on the MLS subreddit, and it wasn't very good. So I was like, okay, I want to
Wait, something on Reddit wasn't good?
Well, someone had just tilted the photo and then just drew a straight line, and the straight line did not represent anything on that field. So I was like, okay, well, it's misleading. The photogrammetry guy on Twitter is no longer doing his thing. So I was like, pulled up Photoshop and started plotting some lines just to kind of get an idea for how far it was. Because, people were talking about, it's such an egregious offside. And, completely unscientific way, but I think Logan's on by about 1.5 feet if you kind of figure out where his shoulder is compared to Reggie Cannon's heel. But I think it's close enough that the lino is going to look down the line. He's going to see Bernie's shoulder close to Reggie. He's going to see a whole blend of that weird blue-grey. And if he's behind play because, he's got to keep up with Farrington, wholly possible, I could see a reason that he would think it appeared offside, especially with if he's, judging by the two centre-backs, considering how far behind them Reggie was. I think the big thing for me was the whole premise when they brought in VAR is offsides are supposed to be if you're certain that's offside. There's not like a set distance, but is it clear cut? Because otherwise you give the benefit of the doubt to the attacker and VAR takes care of it. And that didn't happen.
Well, unless he was absolutely certain he was offside. I mean, maybe in that moment he really was convinced he didn't see Reggie at all and was 100% convinced, and that's the error, right?
Yeah, and then that's just kind of the unfortunate nature of it, is there may not be the absolute definitive camera angle to call that a clear and obvious error.
Back a couple of years ago when I was doing MLS broadcasts, they did a presentation at the beginning of the season to explain delayed offsides when VAR came in. And when they said that, you have to be absolutely clear, they didn't mean I'm very confident. They meant it's got to be 15 yards. If it's within, if it's within 10 yards, even just leave the flag down, just because it's so much better to pull a goal back and say that's not a goal, you're off, than it is to stop it and not get a goal that could have been. The weight on those two things is skewed so heavily to the, not denying a goal scoring opportunity by the referee, that it's supposed to be blatantly, not just oh, you're sure. No, it's got to be half the field offsides before they're going to raise the flag and run a play. And that obviously over the last couple of years, that's gone away and it's become tighter and tighter and tighter. And they probably will need to be reminders, I'm sure, this week for everybody to the referees. I'm just assuming you better better be 10 yards before you raise the flag.
I think we all prefer how MLS handles clear and obvious error,
for sure,
specifically on offside, versus how they draw lines in the Premier League and all that stuff. And you love it until this happens, and then you don't love it. And I do think that MLS's kind of application, the way it was originally intended of applying this, hey, VAR is going to get intervened when there's a clear and obvious error, is definitely one of those things that in theory works out in balance over the course of the season. And it dawned on me that this is maybe even karmic payback for as recently as a week ago, because go back and remember the winning goal for Dallas in Houston. Musa, we talked about it on the podcast. It was an incident with Musa and McGlynn, and I've watched that several times. And so he kind of pulls him at the shoulder, McGlynn goes down, and I'm thinking if that had happened in reverse, and Houston had gone and scored the winning goal of the game, we all would have written sternly worded letters to the UIL and been really unhappy about it. So, that is but here's the deal. The referee didn't call the foul. VAR watched it, said there's not a clear and obvious error there. So the goal stands. It worked out in Dallas's favor. And I think that's what happens here. And it's kind of making up the point that those things tend to balance themselves out over the course of the season. In Dallas's case, it just appears to have happened in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, all Vinting's going to do is let us just, it's not going to accomplish anything. It's more about just do we agree or not with the call? And at some point, you just kind of have to move on, and you hope they do balance out
Well, I agree that if you look at the still that everybody's looking at, it does appear that Reggie is holding Logan off. But as Dan has pointed out, the picture is somewhat deceiving because there is some distortion in that photo. It's not a perfect bunch of 90-degree angles. And it's not, it isn't you couldn't 100% guarantee that Logan is on or off in that particular moment. The error is 100% with the assistant raising the flag in a way too tight a situation. And here's my guess. Whenever MLS holds their kind of weekly review, official referee review deal, they'll admit that this was wrong. And the error was that the referee raised his flag too quickly, and they'll account for that. And that's how I think this will play out.
When I did the pro referees, they did the briefing to media a few weeks ago, and one of the things that came up was I think it was Alan Kelly had really hammered home like the YouTube thing with Greg Barkley, the weekly video review thing, is going to be a little bit more educational potentially this year. That's going to come out Friday or Saturday morning. So it'll be interesting to see if this incident will be on there. The one for week 1, every incident, I think, was from the Chicago Columbus game. So, they're not doing every incident by any means.
Yeah. I think they're doing the more controversial ones, and I think certainly this would qualify, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a potential winning goal.
Yeah. So speaking of rules, something happens in the 84th minute. Now, I'm trying to remember when it happened earlier in the game and which player, but a Dallas player got fouled in the middle of the field at some point earlier in the game and had to come off. And Dallas, and a yellow card was shown, but not for the foul. It was shown for somebody kicking the ball away. And the Dallas player that had to come off the field then fell victim of the 2-minute rule. Like if you go down with an injury and a trainer has to come out and deal with you, you've got to go sit off for 2 minutes. And so Dallas had to play, I think it was the last couple minutes of the first half.
Yeah, it was Cole Bassett kicked the ball out of play.
Right. Who was the player that got kicked?
Good question.
I don't remember. Whoever it was. So Dallas had to play the last minute or so of the game down a man. Well, in the 84th minute, Farfan loses a duel, grabs his head, goes down, but when the replay happens, Farfan didn't get hit in the head. And they stop play while Colorado has possession because they're claiming it's a head injury. And so now Farfan, because he was faking it, at least according to what we can all see on the video replay, he goes down, he has to come off, and now Dallas has to play down a man for 2 minutes. So there's the pro and con of that rule that is specific to MLS, by the way.
I actually really like that rule. I know that there'll probably be a time when it'll bite Dallas in the butt, and it'll probably bite other teams in the butt. But I'm okay with that rule. I don't like people on the ground that aren't hurt. And it's hard for me to say that that's not who's hurt or not. But it's like, if that rule can be at all effective in cleaning up some of that stuff, I applaud it. I definitely remember Farfan dropping and holding his head. So they're like, oh, it's a head injury. Stop the play. You have to stop the play if it's a head injury. Well, yeah, turns out he was faking. So maybe he'll get a stern talking to and won't get his Laurel and Hardy handshake or something. But, definitely as a concept, I'm not unhappy with that rule. The other version of it is the get off in 10 seconds when you're sub part. I don't mind that one either. I think those ideas are not terrible.
The player in stoppage time was Pedrinho.
Oh, that's right. It was Musa. Yeah. So the game kind of goes on. Dallas has to put up with a lot of pressure, and then ultimately Dallas has a really good opportunity themselves. It takes a block by Stefan in the corner. If Dallas had scored that game, it would have been a really nice and outstanding goal. But we end up at kissing the sister 3-3, and Dallas with 4 points in 2 games. I also think Buzz, somebody that should have been considered man of the match material because he's been really solid for 2 games here, is Sebastian Lletget.
Yeah, he's been doing the business. He was my man of the match of the last spring warm-up game because he was the guy that was the most ready for the season. He was the most fit. He was the most in midseason form, and he's carried that over. He's been I mean, you could really say all last season, but really since middle of last season in particular, you can argue he's been Dallas's best player. He's carried that over to that level of performance over to this year. He's not, because he's playing deeper, he's not ending up on the score sheet as much, but he's still very impactful. He had an absolutely terrific game. I mentioned that he had the most touches because the team's playing through him, but even from that deep, he still had 3 shot creating actions, and he had a nice defensive game too, with 2 out of 3 on tackles. You don't think of him as being a tackler, but he was doing it, and 4 blocks. So he's doing the business both ways. Credit to him, because he's not a guy that you thought of as a defensive player. Probably being a double pivot helps, but you're not trying to extend him too far. And all in all, just like those 2 guys in the middle, Ramiro and Lletget, are doing a really nice job of holding a really good solid shape. Like if you look at the Dallas's average shape, it's not all wonky and out of position, and guys aren't drifting where they need to be. And a lot of that really is probably down to them holding it all together in the middle. So I think a lot of credit to Lletget early, and the real key, of course, will be, can he hold it up given his age? Can he hold up over the course of the season?
Dan, my read after 2 games is I don't know how good Dallas is. I know they can look really good in moments, but there are long stretches of both of these games where I'm very concerned how this team is both progressing the ball, moving forward, and obviously some defending issues. Where is the Danometer on Dallas at this point after 2 games?
I mean, it's just exciting. I'm just here for nothing predictable. I can watch Luton on a Saturday morning and know I'm going to be disappointed. I can watch FC Dallas in the evening and, it may be an absolute masterpiece. It may be a dumpster fire. I don't know.
And you don't care. You just love it either way.
Hey, we're here for entertainment.
Since I'm asking you a question, this is the first time we've seen the Inferno kit in all of its glory, or whatever adjective you'd like to insert there. You got a thought on the on its look in action?
It's a bit boring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's you know what? It's kind of like that deal where you call a handyman and he's like, "Oh, I do plumbing and I also do electrical." And you're like, "Then you're probably not good at either one of those." Well, is it gray or is it blue? It's neither, and that's a problem. I don't know what color that kit is, and
it looked great with the Anthem jackets when they did the close-ups and the cameras actually picked up the blue. But yeah, other than that, it was just white.
Yeah, it's just a light color. Also, I don't know what it was about the Apple production or the camera angles.
Oh my God, don't get me started.
Well, no, I was just going to say at the beginning of the game when they were doing all kind of the crowd shots and the atmosphere shots, I was like, man, Dick's Sporting Goods Stadium looks like the most janky-ass high school thing going on in MLS. It's so MLS 1.0. And I realize Toyota Stadium isn't much better from that kind of like how it looks kind of thing compared to all the new stadiums in the league. Yeah. But at least we know something's coming. I feel bad for Rapids fans because I think they're kind of stuck with that thing, with that weird kind of like roof that's nothing but an aesthetic piece. It has no actual function to it. Yeah. It's pretty janky looking.
Not much around there, I understand either. I haven't been to a game there yet. I need to do that at some point, but yeah, not a great venue, but I mean, Denver doesn't suck. Been being up in that neck of the woods.
So, real quick, Buzz. Any more rumors on the Caíque, Brazilian 6, the 19-year-old?
No, but when it progresses to the stage that Bogart's talking about it being in final negotiations, I'm sure that's legit. I imagine at this point we won't hear any more until a deal gets announced, and if a deal doesn't happen, of course, we'll never hear anything about it again. But nothing new on that front, other than like we've had confirmation that is how you say it. The Caíque is correct. Thank goodness.
Phew. Yeah. Somebody asked me about it the other day, and they said, "Do you think this is a good thing or bad thing?" And I said, "Well, I don't really care how the Hunts spend their money. What I'm more worried about is what's the point? What's the purpose of this addition to the roster? Is it added with the primary idea of him being like a quality addition to the roster that's going to make a difference, or are they doing this for business purposes?" And that's the part I can't quite square in my head yet. Until we see him and see how much he plays, I just don't think we know.
It feels like business because of the fact that he hadn't debuted really or hadn't played much with Grêmio. Brazilian league is quality, so like that's not definitive, but like the fact that he's only 18, 19 years old and hasn't really broken into their first team puts him on par with the Portuguese kid that they got from the U23 team, in Portugal. So it's not. It feels more like a guy that's for either the future or it's for business, and probably it's not going to make much of an impact this year. And then you wonder about eating a U22 initiative. I mean, U22 initiatives are about development, and we're almost certain that that's what it's going to be if it happens.
Yeah.
But their track record with that is just not good. So it's like it makes us very nervous about using what could be such a good mechanic. But again, it's a high risk mechanic. It's the idea of the whole mechanic is designed to make an MLS a selling league where you're going to roll the dice on something and see if you can come up big. So it is a bit of a risky,
and it's a lot of money too,
it's a
man.
lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That price, that's a top 5 deal all time for FC Dallas. So they better be confident. I will say that Orentelli, the new scout, the head of scouting, the new technical director, technically since Andre Zanota got promoted a little bit, since he's come in and since we feel like he's gotten involved, we kind of like some of these new signs that are happening, this new direction that's happening. So I feel a little bit more confident than I would say a year ago, or a year and a half ago when we were doing like that in a Sully kind of deal. And we were like, what in the world? So fingers crossed, we'll see. I mean, again, until he plays,
yeah, it's a lot of money for a kid that is probably going to end up playing in North Texas, especially when you have a very clear, glaring need at the same position that he supposedly plays. That's why I think they're bringing him in to actually play, because they think he can do it, because they need somebody in that position so badly.
I mean, the tape looked good, but it looks good against scrubs. So,
right.
Lots of tapes look good at that level. And, highlight clips can all be like, everybody make great highlight clips. So,
yeah, for sure.
I think you're right that if it does happen, he'll spend some time in North Texas. Hopefully it won't be a ton though, because U22 initiatives shouldn't be playing all that much at North Texas, but you probably have to do some, I think. I think that's not a question.
All right. Dallas has their first home game of the year coming up Saturday at 7:30. The Fire. It's the Brimstone Cup, kids. Is that still a thing, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan, what you going to tell us about the Fire?
A lot of goals coming one way or the other. First 2 games of the season, lost 4-2 against Columbus. They just drew 2-2 against DC United after DC had I think it was 5th minute of stoppage time bicycle kick from the edge of the area. Absolute ridiculous goal. But the key is they are scoring and they are conceding at a rapid rate, which paired up with FC Dallas. Hey, we joke about those 4-3 games. This is going to be a 5-4 game.
It's going to be a roller coaster season, man. Just hold on to that.
But yeah, they've got Hugo Kuipers up front, just got a brace against DC. Both of them came off corners. He's making a back post run, right? So corners, FC Dallas Achilles heel. And with both of them, he just crept in at the back post. So it's going to have to be no second balls, just get it away. They've had an absolute shit ton of injuries. I think they had 9 players out against DC. They've really dipped into their MLS Next Pro side. As a result, their midfield has been a little bit shaky. They are going to get Brian Gutierrez back from suspension, so that will relieve a lot of pressure on Kellen Acosta to not have to play as a 2-way midfielder.
Back-to-back weeks against former Academy products. Wow.
Surely it's got to be Lucho versus... Actually, it's Acosta versus Acosta. That's got to be your matchup, right?
Well, it's a tale of 2 Acostas.
I think that the scary part for FC Dallas is FC Dallas obviously has really struggled with that in-between space, inside Shaq Moore, outside of Ramiro and Sebastian Ibiaga. The same half space, with the opposite half space of what we talked about when it was Reto Ziegler at left centre-back. That is the exact spot that the new fella, Jonathan Bamba, just loves to attack, and he is absolute quality. So they really need to be on their game, whether that is pull Shaq Moore back, whether that is switch the centre backs and have Urigide on that side so that you can kind of match pace. They've got to make some adjustment. Conversely, Chicago centre backs are slower than dirt. Any ball over the top, Musa's going to just race onto, Pedrinho's going to race onto, Farrington's going to race onto. I'm trying to think who the slowest player on the team is, but they would probably race onto it. Yeah, and they did bring in
Ibiaga.
Ibiaga's not the slowest.
No, he's
team.
not.
Not even close. No. They did bring in Jack Elliott in the off season from Philadelphia. Pretty impressive get centre back, but I don't know. They've been really bad in the air. They're playing that Greg Berhalter system. They're trying to play out of the back, and they are really struggling.
Berhalter, I forgot.
Well, they had a Houston level giveaway against Columbus.
They pulled a Houston.
Good game for counter-pressing by Dallas.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and weirdly for a centre back pairing that is, I think they're both 6'4", they can't win a header to save their lives. Peter Musa could have a field day.
Sounds very similar to FC Dallas.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It'll be fun. A season over. Plus, it'll be interesting because this will be the first time half the stadium is crammed over on the west half of the side, and we'll be staring. I'm interested to see how the league and the club has decided to set up camera positions. Are they going to shoot from east to west? And show the people sitting in the stands? Is that what they're going to do? I don't know.
This year it should be the same because it's the west. Oh, it's the east side that's empty. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what are they going to do? And then you got the problem of the sun setting down on that side, and you don't want to be shooting into the sun. And
well, that's the problem with flipping it is that you can't. You're looking into the sun, and B, Toyota Stadium is not pre-fibered to that side, so you'd have to do long fiber runs around the stadium, which is not crazy expensive, but it does take like a lot of extra time, and you have to hire people to do it. So you have to spend extra money to do it. And if that side's becoming a production
or construction
zone, that means you'd have to take the stuff in and out every week. It wouldn't be like you could drop it in once and then not worry about it. You have to put it in and out every time, and that cost would begin to add up. So I'm going to bet you, without having seen it yet, I'm going to bet you the cameras are still on the west side, and you're just going to see empty
it's just
stands.
going to look like the COVID games.
Yeah, and maybe they'll drape some of those stands or something, or they'll probably have taping at the top that'll say, like, stay out because it's under construction. The lone construction worker will be over there.
Yeah, maybe they've already bought the big video wall that they're going to add to the stadium at the end, and they're going to put it in front of where the east stands either are or aren't going to be, and they'll just run a video of people, fans in seats.
That'll work.
And we'll they'll fake it.
It's live video of the other side.
It's like Disney's Volume, where they shoot all the Mandalorian and everything.
Cardboard cutouts in the stands. Yeah.
That would actually, cardboard cutouts of people would be awesome.
It'll be fun. The lone construction worker will be over there to get the balls.
All right, you got a prediction on a starting 11, Buzz? Are we going to see? He's got to start Farrington at this point, right? He's got to give him his shot now.
Well, I would say that Farrington deserves a start because of how good he's been. And I did raise the idea earlier that maybe it's been a Bernie gets a game, Pedrinho gets a game, and now Farrington gets a game. If their defense is slow, it would make more sense to play Farrington because he's more likely to go over the top. Pedrinho's not really going to play over the top. So maybe you would make, because Quill did insist that like some of those choices will be made based on matchups. So maybe it makes more sense to play Farrington, and maybe it even makes more sense to go to Bernie, another over the top sort of player. But based on performance, I would leave Pedrinho in. I don't think Pedrinho played poor enough to get yanked.
And Bernie so if he does, very dodgy to me.
Who was?
Bernie, even in his sub performance. I just didn't.
I know.
There's something wrong.
I don't think Bernie really would be an option. So I think I would say Pedrinho played well enough to keep the spot. But there is that idea of maybe I take a look at each guy as a starter, and maybe Farrington would work better, with some vertical component. That way you would have Julio, Musa, and Logan going, and Lucho Costa can just be underneath a little bit. But then he also talked about wanting to get Lucho higher, and then that brings back in Pedrinho to come underneath. So this is going to be some tactical choices, and we're going to learn something about Eric Quill as we're still learning about what his choices are in this new season, this new system, a new set of players.
All right, Fire come to town, home opener Saturday at 7:30. Hope everybody gets to go. I'm sure it'll be sold out. Hey, it's only 11,500 people. The run sheet says Buzz has, quote, some USL news.
Yeah, so I've been poking around on this for a while. You guys remember that Donnie Nelson owned the franchise rights for the Austin Bold? That
he bought the rights to the Bold,
yep.
and we thought he was going to put a team at the Keller facility.
Facility. We talked about how the political side of that one went dead and killed that sort of deal, but that Donnie had been re-upping his rights. So I learned recently that someone has bought him out of those rights. So Donnie Nelson is out, and somebody else has bought them. And I think that you will hear soon, maybe, something about a USL team in Fort Worth. I don't know what level it's going to be. I don't think USL 1. I think it'll be higher than that because the Bold was the USL Championship franchise rights.
Man, I'm telling you, USL, at the headquarters of USL, has to be thinking and dreaming of a world where they launch this new USL Premier with a Dallas team and a Fort Worth team.
It has to be possible. It's got to be legitimately possible because you don't buy those USL Championship rights and then go USL 1. So it's at least USL Championship looking at coming in, and then you were like the USL Dallas guys were telling me they learned about the Premier League thing like a day or something or a week or something before they made their announcement.
Yeah, and I saw like they've said I've even seen that they were quoted as saying they were already thinking about moving the stadium up to 15,000.
Why wouldn't you, right? Especially if they start making noise about pro rel. Even if you come in at USLC, why limit yourself if it only has to go like up a little bit, that extra 5,000 seats? Now all of a sudden I'm in contention if we do go pro rel, or I got 2 years before I'm playing. Maybe I can make that move or whatever. And now there's this new factor over on Fort Worth. I don't know who it is. I just know somebody bought out Donnie Nelson, and so it's somebody else. And I think that you'll hear. But the impression I was given was that you'll hear something. Now we're talking about timelines of franchises. So I don't mean like next month. I just mean like sometime in the next, whatever, behind the timeline of time curve that USL Dallas is on, behind that curve, something that going that way. And I've had people explain to me that because all these USL teams coming in, I'm like, how's that all fitting in? And they've explained to me kind of about how when you hold the rights, you hold a zone. So that's what somebody has bought. Was they bought Donnie Nelson's rights to what is basically like the middle Fort Worth, as I understand it, which is basically like Keller down. And there are even like someone could have like a way north or a way south if they wanted to, like Texoma has way north over Dallas, for example.
Right. Well, throwing a team in the championship in Garland is cool, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But if USL Premier or Premiership, whatever they end up calling it, launches with a team in Fort Worth and a team in Dallas, now you've got my attention because now you've got the squeeze. Like using Dallas Fort Worth as a use case or a test case of MLS versus USL Premier. Now there's you a story. Yeah. Now that's one to watch for.
Even if they only bring in one team, it'll be fascinating to watch how, like, if one of them's Premier and one in USL Dallas stays championship, it'll be fascinating. If they both come up, or it's the one Dallas is up and Fort Worth is down, whatever it is, the landscape is going to alter here completely when you have a team coming in of that stature or two teams coming in of that stature. It's going to be fascinating to watch how fan bases react, how markets react, how soccer awareness reacts in this city. I mean, this is for later in the pod, but there's even another 4th division team that came in today.
Yeah, you might as well mention that since we're here.
I mean, it's a team called Central Dallas FC. I've never heard of them. They're brand new. They're basically launching with this announcement. And then they had a quote from their GM and their president, who both appear to be employees on some level of BVB Dallas, what they call BVB North American International. So I'm not sure what kind of official relationship there is there, but anyway, it's the same level again as Denton Diablos or McKinney Chupacabras, Fort Worth Vaqueros. So now we're going to have 6 teams at that level here in town,
but not even all in the same league. They're all playing in different leagues.
In 3 different leagues.
Yeah.
So that's a weird landscape too. So
where are they going to play? Do we know?
They didn't mention that. I mean, it's called Central Dallas, so I assume that means it's actually going to be in Dallas. I'm sure that's the bit, is they're saying like, no, we're in Dallas.
Weirdly, the map that the league had them north of FC Dallas.
Did they really? In the picture? Yeah. I didn't notice that.
That may just be,
somebody doesn't know what the Dallas area looks like. It just threw the logo.
Yeah,
on there.
Yeah, they've just popped a dot on there, and And that's it could be because they didn't announce a stadium of any kind, and they're obviously brand new. So there's
they have the FC Dallas mark as being smack on top of Dallas, with the FC Revolution smack on top of Fort Worth.
Oh, okay,
and then the FC Central being, I don't know what you call that, the DFW airport, maybe. Right. I don't think it's a very accurate map, but I think BVB International, aka BVB Dallas, I think they're like in the Farmers Branch-ish era, maybe.
They're over at the what used to be the old Blue Sky Carrollton facility is where they were headquartered. With that, They've got some outdoor fields over there. The fields are terrible, but they have outdoor fields. And it's now Toka, those awful Toka people that took over the Blue Sky facility.
Yeah, there's no mention of a stadium in the release. There's just talk about how it's a new team. We're real excited, blah, blah, blah. So there's no official relationship. When I Googled those two guys, one of them's the BVB director and the other one's one of their coaches. So it's like, okay.
All right, Dan, after having a week off, Dallas Trinity is back at it at the Cotton Bowl with the hated Brooklyn FC, the best team in the league.
I mean, they were. They've struggled since coming back from the break as well.
Did they lose a bunch of players too?
They actually didn't. They lost Taylor Smith, but she hadn't really.
She had to go back on tour.
Not Swift. Smith.
Oh,
Taylor Smith, the former U.S. international from Fort Worth.
Not the international pop superstar that has $1 billion tour.
No.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Dan. I didn't mean to bother.
Yeah, they've had 2 games, drew both. They drew against Tampa Bay Sun. They drew against Lexington, who are bottom of the league. So, I don't know what's going on with them. They're having a little bit of a struggle.
Picking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say that, but Trinity have also had their issues. Drew with Tampa Bay Sun as well. Lost to Spokane in a absolutely dire game. The whole top of the league's gone a bit funny. Fort Lauderdale's really the only team that's kind of come into it. They've played 3 games now because they had the extra week, and they've won all 3.
Interesting. All right. Well, that game's at 4:00 on Saturday out at the Cotton Bowl.
That is on Sunday.
Sunday. I'm sorry, I cannot read. It's Buzz's crayon writing on the run sheet. It's
not that's very what clear. It is.
Yes. All right. And when is this the weekend? North Texas kicks off their defense of their championship.
Yeah, Choctaw Stadium on Sunday. It'll be interesting to see who comes down from FC Dallas.
The U19 team.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of academy dudes. I mean, that's going to change a tiny bit here because you'll see some of the homegrowns, I think, kick down. But it's going to be really young ones like Tark Scott played in their final scrimmage, and Daniel Barron, who's a homegrown on the FC Dallas roster. I think so. I would imagine he and Scott and Sam Sarver, who's the second round FC Dallas pick out of Indiana. He's the old man of that team. I imagine he'll be there. And then probably, the thing about being on Sunday, which is nice, like you could see anyone who doesn't play could go. Like maybe would we see Nolan? Anthony Ramirez maybe would fill in as that 10 in that Lucho Acosta role. You probably end up seeing a lot of their signings aren't here yet because of visas. So you'll see a lot of homegrowns or even academy kids like Ali Uzura, who's a homegrown, Caleb Swan, a homegrown, or on a hybrid deal. He's not his homegrown part yet. And you'll probably have to play your academy guys like Josh Torcato or Ian Charles in the back line with some of your other picks. And the last one spot that'll be really fascinating will be, do they send down Antonio Carrera or not? They signed that keeper, J.D. Harms, out of Indiana. But Carrera's, as the third choice of FC Dallas, what's he going to do? Sit around and not play? I mean, he kind of grew out of that league like 2 years ago almost. So, but do you want him to sit around and doing nothing, or do you let him go down there and start some games? So that'll be fascinating from a roster build development kind of perspective. How many guys go down and how many are not? And then of course they'll play some sort of variation of a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, one or the other. Just rotate the middle field a little bit, depending on whether you have a pure 6 or not. But some of the guys that they expect to fill some of these more mature international players are not going to be here yet. So you're starting the season with a fair bit of academy, it looks like.
Okay. So that kicks off on Sunday out at Choctaw. Did y'all see Charlotte's new post-game celebratory man of the match bit they did with Wilfred Zaha after their big win? Dan, did you see this?
Absolutely not.
So what they do now is the man of the match is crowned like a king with a crown, because, that's part of their sermenti and all that. And then he walks up the steps in the middle of what appears to be their supporters group and then sits on a giant throne.
That's fun. That is fun.
And I'm thinking, poor Wilfred Zaha, the same guy who started his career by going to Manchester United and getting accused of sleeping with the manager's wife.
Oh,
David Moyes.
I didn't know that.
And now he's ending his career by getting crowned and getting to sit on a throne in the stands after a man of the match performance.
I hope he embraces the fun of it, and just be like, why not be like,
It's pretty great stuff.
North Texas does the same black cowboy hat that FC Dallas does, so that's obviously the club's bit at this point. So
bits are fun.
Bits are fun.
Some bits are fun.
Yeah, the old branding of the leather was not fun.
That one didn't work so well. They were going for the Portland timber sawing vibes with that one. Didn't work very well.
Still say they should have just cut a brisket.
Give him a sandwich.
It was very self-harmish. It was not a good look by the decision makers of Dallas at the time. All right, well, hopefully it's a good atmosphere and good crowd. I'm looking forward to see how they set the stadium up. Now that we've had that conversation, I have a feeling this will be a big talking point on the podcast next week of how they set the stadium up, considering it's going to be half empty, and what the vibe and the atmosphere and the scene's going to be like. So we'll see.
Third degree, yes indeed. What's up, everybody? Pappy Check here, and I am back in the DFW. I'm trying to do this music thing, and the only people that I really need to connect with, intermingle with, that I want to get to know are my fellow soccer sickos from Third Degree. Follow me on Instagram at pappy.check, or come see me play live on Thursdays in Bishop Arts District at Taco y Vino. It's good times. Come out and see me, and I will play you the Third Degree theme live. Wouldn't that make your day?
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by the Dallas Beer Guardians. Friday night is the biggest party of the year. To celebrate FC Dallas's home opener, the Dallas Beer Guardians are hosting their 24-hour tailgate, and they're inviting out all the FC Dallas curious. DBG taps the kegs at 7 p.m. in the Red Lot on the southwest end of Toyota Stadium, and the beer keeps flowing all the way to kickoff on Saturday. Just look for the big tent. In addition to the always free beer, DBG will have free food from their executive chef, plenty of games and activities, and maybe even some surprise guests. If you can't join them for the 24-hour tailgate, you can always find DBG on X, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, and Discord threads. Basically anywhere you can legally check out social content. Just search for Dallas Beer Guardians.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. Good stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Buzz, happy 4 points to you, sir.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know it was my birthday.
It's just 4 points.
It's just 4 points.
Just 4 points.
Hey, by the way, real fast on the player signing watch, I'm going camping for a couple of days. So, chance. FC
When are you
Dallas.
going camping?
I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Going to be gone until Thursday. So, you got a 2-day window to get your signing done while I'm.
Kaik is coming in. He'll be here by Wednesday afternoon.
Look for that announcement since I'm leaving town.
Just write it down. It's happening for sure. All right, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll all keep that on watch. We're officially on Buzz on vacation. That means the signing's coming in or something's going to happen. Watch. And thank you, you FC Dallas curious fan. We will speak to you next week, hopefully with 3 points in pocket on a next edition of Third Degree, the podcast.
Bring Brimstone home.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.